How are these fintech banks going to be different from your conventional banking, and how can they make a difference?
You interact with Gen Zs and etc. You'll note that they're not very keen on actually interacting face to face with a lot of people on the technological side in particular.
Artificial intelligence, how does that fuse into all of this, and where are we going, especially in context of Pakistan?
Well, once you built and replicated one brain and you build another one, the connections between those, we will get past the power of the human brain in terms of actually technological evolution and growth.
Whenever you hear of agriculture, you hear about lands in the countryside, the farmers.
The farmer in Pakistan is largely not digital.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for joining us once again. This is our second episode on Plugged In with Comstar. In the first episode, we spoke about the IT sector in its infancy in Pakistan, starting off in the early 90s, and we had the CEO of Comstar with us, who took us on a journey and led us all the way up to 2025, and where the IT industry stands in Pakistan right now. So we thought about how about picking up from where we left off in our last episode and driving the conversation forward, and talking about where the IT industry stands in Pakistan right now and how do we see it in the coming future. The buzzwords are, of course, artificial intelligence, fintech, and agritech, and some more as well. We'll learn about those as we go along in this conversation. And for that, we have with us a very special guest, someone who I've known for many, many years. And I always pick his brains when I want to learn something about the IT industry overall and what's happening in this space. He's always up to date, has a vast experience in this field from his college days. In fact, before starting this podcast, he was telling me some really cool things. So what I've done is I've taken my script, thrown it out, and we'll let this conversation flow now, and let's see where it leads us. But the main overall structure will be discussing where we are right now in the IT sector in Pakistan and what the future holds. Let me get straight to our guest, Mr. Khurram Jamali, ex-Google, ex-many, many things, and is doing fantastic things in this space, in this industry in Pakistan. Khurram, assalamu alaikum. Thank you for your time and great to see you again. I've known you for almost 30 years and I never thought I'd be doing this with you, but it's always a first. Thank you for coming.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My pleasure to be here, Altamash. Like you said, I think we always have very interesting conversations. So I'm excited to just chat with you about, my journey and where I think things are going in Pakistan and globally with tech. So happy to be here.
Great stuff. So let's start from the beginning. Let's tell our viewers as well that while we were walking into the studio, remember we had discussed what we'll talk about. We had a little bit of a structure, but then you told me, yaar, aise hi gupshup lagate hain. And let me tell you about my college days. And as someone who's not really in tune with the IT sector and what's going on and latest things, I've only known about AI now, let's say maybe 6 months, a year ago. You told me that you were doing this at college way back in 2000. Let's start from there.
Yeah. So, I went to this small liberal arts college called Middlebury in the US, and they have this thing where you choose a first year seminar. So it's a topic you pick where you really deep dive in the research of that topic. And you have to actually pick it before you get to college, of course, right? Everything else you can pick when you're there. And the title of my first year seminar was Artificial Intelligence. So this was in the year 2000 when I think, not many people actually spoke about it. And the first book that we got to read, we were all given to read and study, was this book called The Age of Spiritual Machines.
Oh, wow.
By this author, Ray Kurzweil, who is now actually... he's one of the chief evangelists at Google. So he's one of the people that Google leadership uses to sort of predict where technology is going.
Okay.
So I felt really privileged looking back that I had the opportunity to sort of get to the cutting edge there. That journey has continued. And the reason I took that course was that technology was something that always excited me. And post-college, in college I did computer science, economics, and actually Mandarin. And then I went on this journey in consulting and investment banking. And then it's actually after grad school and during grad school that I realized actually my passion and my career can be the same thing. And between that, I used to build computers and, do all these things on the side. And I decided, okay, why not have them be the same thing? And that's when I really re-energized or reinvigorated the tech side of my career. I ended up at Google for a few years. I was covering emerging markets out of Singapore. And then thereafter sort of decided to come back to Pakistan and see what sort of population scale impact one could drive from here.
Nice. Let's just talk about that. I know you worked in China. You mentioned Singapore as well.
Yeah.
So what brought you to Pakistan? And was it an excitement that this is an infant place where to start from, something to build on? Was that your reason for coming here? Please tell us more.
Yeah, so my one of the things that when I actually, you knew me in high school, right? I wasn't really all about, oh, Pakistan, let's do something for it. I went to the West and I wasn't planning on actually coming back ever. But I was very lucky to be in an intellectual environment where I sort of realized that one of the biggest problems that countries like Pakistan and China and India have was the brain drain. The best of the best sort of go or to the West and never come back. Now, I don't consider myself one of the best, but I wanted to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So I sort of made an intention that I want to come back and contribute. And even when I didn't come back, I used to try to do something related to Pakistan. So when I was doing consulting in the US, I was also moonlighting as the CFO of Association for the Development of Pakistan, where we used to find and fund measurable, scalable, sustainable development projects. And actually at that time, there was an earthquake in 2005, if you recall, in northern areas. We got this group of people together to try to make a difference. And it was called the South Asia Quake Alliance. And that's where I randomly met who turned out to be my co-founder now. And actually also the person who hired me at Google back in the day. And when I picked Google out of grad school, it was because it was the only job that actually allowed me to cover Pakistan, but also get paid enough to pay back my grad school bills. At that time, we used to work a lot with the startup ecosystem because the job at Google was about, of course, driving sales, but also developing the nascent ecosystem. At the time, YouTube wasn't live in Pakistan. So one of the first things we were trying to do is unblock that so that, creators could actually start earning dollars.
2011, 12.
Yeah. So 2013 onwards, really. Between 2013 and 2017, 18 is when I was there. So it took a lot of hard work, but we managed to unlock a lot of things that were closed back in the day. In that time, Altamash, when we actually we spent a lot of time interacting with and investing in the startup ecosystem. And first things we did was just like invest in startups, and not a single one of them took off. But that's the game you play.
It comes there.
Absolutely. But there were a few learnings on that. Now the way I think about it, and think that's the economics background in me is, what are the different pieces in the recipe that are different for something like China or India versus Pakistan? Why are they where they are versus us? And there's some economic facts which we can talk about later. But one of the things, one of the factors of production is entrepreneurship. And within that, what we found was that there were a lot of brilliant young people. But if you look at the theory of entrepreneurship and which entrepreneurs are actually successful, what you'll find is the median age of successful entrepreneurs is, any guesses?
Let's say mid-20s?
43.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I still have...
You still have time. You're almost there, huh? But we look at the Zuckerbergs and the Gates who are outliers. They're not the norm. And we think that, straight out of college, we can actually go make this happen. What people forget is these guys had IQs off the charts, right? That's not the average person. And if you're going to grow an ecosystem, you need to have a lot of people, not just with the smarts, but also the experiences to actually make things happen. So that was one of the things that drove me back to Pakistan. Like, I, again, wanted to be part of the solution, not the problem. Let's see what one can do by making a difference. So that's really why I came back with my partner to Pakistan. We did some work with the government at the time on the Digital Pakistan initiative. So that's one of the things that really got us going. And that's where we got the first taste of population scale impact. Our timing was such that we actually ended up being almost completely focused on COVID in 2020. And, at the time, data wasn't actually flowing through from the ground up to the government. And we spent a lot of time sort of building that pipeline. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, not building the systems, but actually connecting the systems.
Okay.
I think that's generally what you find broken in emerging markets. There are a lot of really fantastic sort of standalone systems, but it's the connectivity that's actually lacking, right? So that taste of population scale impact, Altamash, like that was something else, right? And so thereafter, things didn't, frankly speaking, really work out as we would have liked in digital Pakistan. But while we had the option to go back to our corporate jobs, I mean, we were both very clear that actually that taste of actually making impact was something that we really wanted to pursue. And so then started our own entrepreneurial journey. We launched a consulting company that did a bunch of work. We ended up actually working on polio eradication with the Gates Foundation. And then we fundraised for a digital bank for the Pan Islamic world. We got some phenomenal investors like New Bank and Sequoia Capital and Kleiner Perkins, but we did not get the license from the regulator in Pakistan. And
to put some perspective, there are a few of them which are about to launch or which have launched in Pakistan. Yeah, that's as we are right now. Oh,
absolutely. So
you guys were going to be a part of that as well.
or if we had gotten the license, we would, I look at, the Mashriq Bank, sort of billboards. Humayun is a phenomenal guy, and I'm really, really excited for what he's going to do with Mashriq. I think Easy Pesa, I'm really, really excited about. And I hope the others also, for the ecosystem, it'd be really, really exciting if all 5 actually make their mark, because there's a lot of headroom right now to drive technology.
There's one question which always comes up, and a very basic question.
Yeah.
How are these fintech banks going to be different from your conventional banking, and how can they make a difference? And how much scope is there for these banks and for proper inclusivity of the Pakistani population?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the things that when the applications were ongoing, there were a couple of really large conventional banks that had also applied, and that was something I was trying to understand why were they also applying when they can do pretty much everything that a digital bank would be allowed to do. Look, I think the main thing, Altamash, is the ability to actually build a digitally native experience. If you look at the conventional banks, they still look at the branch side as like their first point of contact. They continue to take that to the next level. I think HBL Prestige is a great example of what they're doing to evolve the branch experience. On the digital banking side, the idea would be that everything would actually be truly natively digital, which means there would almost be nothing which would require to actually go into a branch. And as you interact with Gen Zs and etc., you'll note that they're not very keen on actually interacting face to face with a lot of people on the technological side in particular. I have problems with getting responses on WhatsApp from my daughters. So I think it makes it a choice rather than, even now, if you look at the conventional banks, right, when you really have a problem, you sort of have to go into a branch. A customer service doesn't really cut it, right? So the idea is that these banks wouldn't have that same problem because they would be truly digitally native. In fact, Tumesh, we actually ended up building, to give that truly digitally native experience, we ended up building our own core banking platform end to end. And it's something that I would have loved to share with Pakistan, because I genuinely felt that that's something that would completely transform the user experience. But alas, it was not to be. So we were on with our journey after that. And the Agritech side, you asked, just to give you an idea of how we ended up there. I think the key again is population scale impact. For us, that's what we always solve for. And we were lucky to have investors that, sort of backed us and said, look, we backed you, so you tell us where you want to take this journey.
Okay.
If you look at, again, China, India, the markets, nobody really went from developing to developed without actually solving the rural economy, right? And really getting the farmer enough money so that the growth starts from there. And so from our perspective, that felt like a good place to start if we were going to start with the clear state.
So Khurram, I'll just quickly tell our viewers that very seamlessly you moved on from Fintech to Agritech. So now we'll talk a bit about that. And Agritech basically means how technology can help the agriculture sector. Agriculture, of course, being the main drivers of the Pakistani economy, almost 25% contribution. But whenever you hear of agriculture, you hear about lands in the countryside, the farmers or the ruling class, which has got their lands. It's not easy for everyone to come into this industry as well. and then bringing tech into this and a place which is not regulated in many ways, and of course there are many problems around this whole thing as well. Bringing tech into this, and of course the level of internet connectivity, bringing technologies to those areas, the access is not that easy as well many times. So where do we stand with that in terms of the Pakistani context, and how did you guys decide to do that, and also convince your investors that this is the place to be?
Yeah, those are really, really important questions. Look, on the investor side, I think we were lucky again to have investors that were willing to back us no matter what. So they believed in what we were trying to do, and there are really two types of entrepreneurs that you'll find around the world. They're the missionaries and the mercenaries, right? And the mercenaries cannot become the missionaries, and the missionaries cannot become the mercenaries. And we were lucky.
I would ask you to hold it there. When you're saying that, it's painting me the picture of the Batman, Dark Knight Rises, Batman and Bane. Mercenaries, missionaries. Please carry on.
Sure, right? Look, it's like a mercenary, and there's nothing wrong with just wanting to make money, right? And for mercenaries, that's how they build their business models. How do I maximize return, right? And those are most of your startups. And there are missionary founders they're after solving a specific problem, and money is a concomitant, and it is important for any company. You have to be profitable for it to work. And we're a little bit of the latter, where we want to build models where we're again driving population scale impact, but also whilst making money. So that's why, that's why agri. And the second thing on like how to do it, from our perspective, where a lot of people may not get it perfectly right in Pakistan is the desire to force people to do things that they don't want to do.
Yeah.
The farmer in Pakistan is largely not digital, right? And they're not interested in being digital. And if you actually go and look at their life, you can understand why. You talked about connectivity problems. That's the reality of rural Pakistan. You go from down one street or one khet and you realize that yahan to kuch connectivity nahi hai. So why would you even want to use a smartphone on a regular basis or link your life to it? So from our perspective, the key was, the way we thought about it is that we don't actually want to digitize the farmer. We want to digitize the data of the farmer, which then allows others to actually serve the farmer so that they don't have to undertake the high cost of actually collecting that data. So we built a platform where we're actually tracking pretty much all the particulars of a farmer, including, where the land is that he's working on, what crops he's planted in the past, do soil and water tests to figure out what the fertility level of that soil are, what he's planning to plant in the future. We have about 180 centers across 10 districts in Punjab where we sell inputs to farmers. We have an NBFC that lends to farmers. And then we help them actually with the harvest as well through our agronomists throughout the process. And then we actually also either buy their output from them in the case of wheat or milk, or in other cases help them, like maize. We actually help them find buyers like mills or starch pack or Rafan, etc. And so the idea is you don't become sort of a one-cycle supporter of a farmer, but you're doing that all year, every year. We also have our own food products. We have Kisan Kanak, which is launched in Punjab pretty much across all the main stores, which is chakki ka whole wheat atta. And then we have an Asli ghee brand that is launched recently as well. And we're going to be growing our value chain. So we're really going literally from farm to fork.
Yeah.
And we're using data as the underlying commodity to be able to scale.
Okay.
So think of us as kind of like the Amazon of the rural market, where other agri companies or other companies that want to serve the farmer, because we have the data, they can actually leverage our platform to serve the farmer, as opposed to having to go and set up physically. And we are doing the physical and the digital setup to extract the cost.
Explain the business model behind this, because that's very interesting. You're saying it's from the farm to the fork.
Yeah.
And you're across the value chain, you guys have your inputs there.
Yeah.
So how does that work?
Oh, that's a really important question. So look, if you look at different parts of this value chain, right, there are the rural economy by definition is not like a huge margin business for the farmer.
Yeah.
Right. Inputs are a sub 10% game, right? Each of these pieces of the value chain are not massive profit makers. But if you think of it like per acre of land, what are like the different ways that you can actually create small margins in it, then it becomes really, really interesting. And that's how we think about it. So by selling inputs, like, and two things we're really focused on, and why we were able to scale our business is, from day one, we said, number one, we're only going to sell at the MRP that the government mandates. We're not going to actually charge higher fees, even if there's a supply disbalance. Number two, there's going to be no adulteration in our products, right? Just by doing those two things, we were better than most players in the market. And that's why the farmer came in the door.
That was your value proposition.
That was our value proposition, right? But again, that meant that we made less than others.
Yeah.
Others who, just if they were just in the input business, they have to try to make more to make it a sustainable business. But because we were not just in the inputs business, we were also then providing support, lending, and then buying the output and potentially making commission on that front. All of that together makes it sort of a viable value proposition from a business perspective. Our aim is, Altamash, if you look at the entire value chain of agri, the farmer makes somewhere between 8 to 10% of the entire profit pool, right? Our aim is, how do we get that to 16 to 20%? Now, doubling it sounds kind of crazy, but when you say from 8 to 16 of an entire profit pool, it's not a crazy value proposition. But you do that, you're transforming the farmer's life. So our aim is not that someone needs to help the farmer. We want to be the ones that help the farmer by giving them a loan to, beti ki shadi ke liye. We want to get to a point that the farmer does not need to ask anyone for money for his beti's shadi, right? And we think that taking it from 8 to 16 to 20% allows that to happen. And then we feel that there's enough of a profit pool outside that we can make this a viable business.
To make it also sustainable for you guys as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then all of this, is any support from the government? Are those guys giving you their support as well? Because obviously doing all these things in those areas is not easy with the policies. And as you mentioned, that you're making sure that your price is same as the MRP of what the government is setting.
Yeah.
Fluctuations keep on happening. We know all the problems around the whole agri sector in Pakistan as well.
Yeah. Look, the government is, I think the government is doing their best wherever they can, right? I think there's a really interesting program that the State Bank has just come out with called Zarfez, in which they've actually connected with the Punjab Land Authority to be able to give farmers digital loans on the spot to any bank of their choice. I think it's up to ₹1 million at low margins. But my perspective on this is that, again, like, if you're the small landholder farmer, and by the way, over 80% of the farmers in Pakistan own less than 12 acres. And 12 acres is an important number, because anything below that, the cost of actually going and doing the assessment, it becomes such that it's not financially feasible for large banks, right? And that's 80% of the value proposition. Now, if one can figure out a way to go circumvent that, then it becomes interesting. And I think that's what the State Bank's trying to do with the Zarkhez program. So they're doing some interesting things. I think Punjab always is trying to do some interesting things on the tech front. I think Sindh has been coming up. I mean, you've noticed how we're getting now tickets while driving around, which is a first step, but you've seen how the traffic has improved in Karachi, right? So technology is
People know where the cameras are.
Absolutely, right? So technology as a means to solving problems, I think is still pretty much, it's in its initial phases in Pakistan. But I'm excited about what we can do overall.
As you mentioned, we're still in our initial phase when it comes to Agritech. So you've been across the country looking at farms and seeing what they're doing, their systems. Where do we stand right now in terms of Agritech? How many farms are actually using technology? You said the farmer himself is not willing to adopt that technology, but then of course there are the landowners as well. How easy are they towards adapting technology, and where do we stand, and how much growth potential is there to be taken?
That's a great question too. Look, if you talk about the large landhold farmers, I mean, I think they're doing phenomenal work in Pakistan. They're very much aware of everything that's going on globally, whether it's drip farming, all the different things, vertical farming. There's a lot going on. When it comes to the smaller farmers, I think the problem is, we've had issues with the last few crops. They've been squeezed mightily, and I think that's leading to a few problems. So we're currently in a phase where, there's a lot of supply on the inputs market, and I don't think a lot of farmers necessarily have the buying power to put in what they actually want into the field. So I think the smaller farmer is still completely hand to mouth, right? So there's a lot of room there with the right support and all year round support to actually make a difference. And I hope and pray that we can actually make a difference for those farmers.
Inshallah.
But again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. I don't think we want to digitize the farmer until they're ready to be digitized, but we can use our agronomists and other people to actually help them learn about some of the techniques. And by the way, there's this misnomer that farmers don't know. Farmers are they know what they have to do with their land, right? That they've been doing it, and knowledge has been passed down from generations. So it's a matter of combining that knowledge with the technological know-how that will help them save. And I think that's a journey that is ongoing and it'll take some time.
Perfect. And I know many times that we interact, we talk about getting together for a game or cricket or something. I know you're always usually in Punjab, in the farms yourself, on the ground, getting things done.
Yeah.
And just to wrap this conversation now, coming full circle, we've spoken about fintech, we've spoken about how you got into this, we've spoken about agritech as well. But artificial intelligence, how does that fuse into all of this, and where are we going, especially in context of Pakistan?
Wow. So I think the world is changing in front of our eyes, and it's an interesting. One of the problems that mankind has is, you know what exponential curves are, right? We don't fully understand. We cannot comprehend exponential change, and that's because at any given point in time, even if you're on an exponential curve of change, right, the asymptote to that is still like a straight line, right? So you're looking at it as a straight line, but that straight line is changing. There are a couple of really interesting data points, Altamash, that I'd like to share with you. And this goes back to, again, Ray Kurzweil and, what I sort of learned in 2000. And, you should check out his books, by the way, because a lot of things that he predicted there then is ongoing right now. One of the numbers that he always talks about is computational power per constant dollar. So let's take the 2023 dollar. Right, and just apply what the cost, what you can compute with $1. And if you go back to 1938, right, which is when he started collecting this data. By the way, he was talking about artificial intelligence in the 70s, so he's like 30 years before I even saw it. But in 1940, $1 would allow you to do 0.000001 computation. Okay, right now $1 allows you to do 1 trillion computations. So if you that's, if I'm not wrong, 15 zeros ka delta, right? Like, we're talking about just an insane curve. So what we're seeing right now happen in what we call artificial intelligence is nothing more than the ability of computational power to do a lot more than what we are used to a year ago, and that's an exponential curve that is going to cause exponential change. So the one thing is the computational power. The second really interesting thing is, let's take spirituality out of it for a second, right? And if you talk about the human brain, there is what it is a bunch of interconnected nodes and synapses that are firing at a crazy speed that we have not been able to replicate using what we've set up, right? Because we didn't have the computational power. But we're getting closer and closer to it, which means, theoretically speaking, one fine day, very soon, we're going to be able to sort of replicate the power of the human brain, right? Now, that's where it gets interesting. Once we get there, do you know what actually slows down humanity? Is not how fast your brain's working, but what we're doing right now. We have to talk to communicate. That actually what served us well in sort of growing, evolving till now is actually going to slow down our growth in the future, because I have to enunciate these words for you to understand it. Now imagine if our brains were connected and all of this conversation could have happened in a split second. Well, once you built and replicated one brain and you build another one, the connections between those, because they're digital, are as fast as the connections within the brain. And so we will get past the power of the human brain in terms of actually, technological evolution and growth.
How soon do you see that happening? It's actually scaring me while we speak.
So some people think it's as soon as 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Others think it's 2075, 2080. And I think the question is, what is it going to be, right? Some people think that what they call artificial general intelligence. That was the first buzzword. Now we're talking about universal intelligence. That's something I don't think we're getting to anytime soon. But I think we're going to get to a point where the ability to actually connect our brains somehow to the cloud becomes doable by 2050. I do believe that in the next 3-4 years, what you're looking at, LLMs, right? Large language learning models, like those are one piece of technology. And what's really crazy is, okay, I don't know if we have time, but I want one other like really interesting concept to share with you, right? If you look at revolutionary changes in human evolution, the first one that you look at is actually the agricultural revolution.
Yes.
Right? The second one is the industrial revolution, which there was a huge break in between. The third is probably the computer revolution, and then is the digital revolution and the internet revolution, and so on and so forth. And what you're going to see is, again, this is also a speeding up. This is also an exponential curve, right? We're now getting to a point where paradigm changing inventions are happening like more than once a year. LLMs are just one of those. Robotics, quantum computing, which is going to just dramatically alter everything that we're doing. Biotechnology, nanotechnology, all of these are happening together. And when you sort of ignite them with the fact that artificial intelligence will start figuring out how to actually do inventions instead of us, that's what's really going to, I don't think, again, it's an exponential curve. I don't think our minds can sort of really comprehend what that means. So we're just guessing. But that's what a lot of people call the singularity, where we will cease to exist as individuals. We're all going to be an interconnected hive mind through the cloud, and things are going to be very, very different. Now, I remember I told you leave spirituality out of it. Now, when you plop that back in, I don't know what happens, right?
That calls for another podcast altogether. Robbie, any conversation between us, and then we can share with the viewers as well.
Yeah.
But Khurram, it's been fantastic. And very quickly, where does artificial intelligence stand in Pakistan right now? Are we in line with the rest of the world? Are we getting there? Are we ahead of them? Because I know a lot of great things that are happening here.
There's one artificial intelligence startup in the, I think Imagine.art or something it's called. It's out of Pakistan by 3 young brothers. That is one of the top 5 companies in this space in the world. So the beauty of AI is that it's a great equalizer. As long as you actually learn what you need to learn, and all of that knowledge is actually available, you just need to actually go on the journey of actually going to Coursera and figuring out who the top minds are in this space, and then anything is possible. What I want to see more of in the startup ecosystem is people putting in the hard work of doing the theoretical learning rather than sort of building something that is shallow, right? That's just not going to get you anywhere in the AI world. And there's one example. I think there can be 100. And that's what we need. We need like 5, 10, 50, 100 startups that are cutting edge tech. And that's only going to happen if people actually put in the hard work of doing the learning, which is now largely democratized. And therefore, I have great hope. It only takes a few, billion-dollar companies coming out of Pakistan to actually transform the ecosystem. And I'm very hopeful that we're going to see that sometime soon, inshallah.
That's great. There's a lot of positivity. And on that note, I'll say thank you so much for giving us your time.
My pleasure.
A very amazing conversation. I learned so much, and I'm sure our viewers enjoyed it too. And once those things happen, which you mentioned, I hope you're around. Either we can talk, or we'll be like communicating digitally and getting the across as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, buddy. And that was our second episode on Plugged In with Comstar. Hope you enjoyed it. We will be back with more, inshallah, very soon. Thank you so much for being with us. Have a good day.